picked the wrong week, sniffing glue.
Chewie, we're home.
Well, welcome back. It is beginning of another week, and this week we are going to be working on the Falcon. I've got just this scant few pieces left to do, but it's a lot of little fiddly detail painting, including all of the figures that I'm choosing to use, and I think it's going to be strictly Finn, Rey, and BB-8, given the scene and setting of the base. Han and Chewie hadn't come into the picture yet, so they're not going to be used. And that also means I need to start the detail painting of the cockpit and of the gunwales so that I can get those in place, and then painting the window frames and the cockpit frames. Get that kind of stuff in place. Over the weekend, I chiseled out the back of these because I want to put a light to light up the back, and I figured out what I would need to do is get some appropriate tubage and string between those and put the light in a tube to light both of them at the same time. Well, I test fit them in place and squeezed the two halves of the ship together and realized actually they do butt right up against each other. So it's kind of one of these deals. So there is no tubage needed, but they go together pretty much like that. So what I want to do is paint them, glue them together, and then bore one hole that I can stick a wee LED just, in the side like that, and light up both up and down, light up both gunwales at the same time with the same bulb, which is good because it's simpler lighting. And then I've also figured out that what I want to do for the cockpit is simply to, because there's really no sense trying to make this an elaborately lit thing. The inside of the one part is also the inside wall of the cockpit, so there's not going to be any way to light any of that. Best I can do is try to paint some detail in there, and the same can be said for the controls and all of that. So rather than trying to light any of that, I'll just paint it with a little bit of detail paint, some silvers, some reds, some blues, and then I'm going to lay a tiny surface mount LED on the floor back here and have it shine up into the cockpit, and I think that's going to be enough illumination. I thought maybe briefly of lighting that back wall, but I don't think that's going to be the adequate solution. I think shining up something from the floor is going to be better, but I haven't quite ruled that out yet, so we'll see which one turns out to be the better solution. Let's see what else. Oh, you saw the light for the engines in place, and that's really it. I've got to paint all these little tiny details, and then put the last of the detailed decals down, and that's all that remains. Oh, I'm going to try to weather over top of these decals that have had at least a week, maybe two, to settle, so they should be as dry as they're ever going to be. I'm going to take my usual sidetrack here to rant about decals, and in this case it is the color of the decals. I'm not wowed about this teal, this bluish gray. You could think maybe, okay, something was off in the printing when they printed theirs, and the color shifted wrong, but it's clearly what they intended to do, because it's the same color as these peel and stick decals, and you could maybe give one of them a pass, saying that maybe the printing was off when they printed their decals, but these were printed at two different times at two different places, I'm sure, and yet they still look equally tealish. I mean, that looks as tealish as that does, so that was clearly their intent. So but yet on the detail, on the packaging and everything, they look grayer. So what can you make of that? The people at Bandai, I usually count them as knowing what they're doing, but I just think those colors are a bit too blue. So I may try to remedy that with a little bit of paint over top of it. So we'll see how that experiment goes as well. Okay, for the last few hours I have been poking and prodding and trying to get these painting masks to cooperate. And it took me a couple of rounds, which it normally does. I've cut once, fit it, change it, cut it again, fit it, all that kind of stuff. So I've got both of the gunner's windows ready to go, and I've got the main canopy ready to go. So what I'm going to do now is mask the inside of them with tape so that I don't get any overspray on them, and start with light coats of gray primer. Okay, and they've got a nice first coat of gray on them, and I will let that dry and probably put a whitish, very light gray coat over top of them. Okay, just before I box it up for the evening, I've just done a little bit of pilot painting. See if I can even focus on them. They are so tiny, but there's a tiny little fin and a tiny little ray, and I'm not going to use the Han or Chewie, but I painted them anyway. See, I made a rhyme, but there's the tiny Chewie. So Finn will go in one of these chairs, and the chair will go into one of these bays, gunner bays, and hopefully that'll go behind one of these windows, and Ray will go into the cockpit, and maybe we'll get some of this stuff finished up and wired up tomorrow, and then once that's all put together and wired in, then I can put these two halves. Oh, I don't think whether I showed you this or not. If I have already, then please just disregard. But putting a wash over the decals does blend them in a little bit better and make them look more like they're supposed to be there by continuing dirt smudges and stuff over them. So still not wild about the teal color of them, but they don't look like a sore thumb anymore. They don't stand out as much since I have put a wash over them. And I don't know if you've seen it in the background or not, but this is what the new figure is going to be. Actually, it is a continuation of something I started a long time ago, but it solves two problems using this character from District 9. It gets something off of my half-complete pile or barely started pile. This was one of those projects that I put a bare coat of primer on and then kind of squirreled away for a later time. And B, I already have shelf designated for it because it was sitting on a shelf all this time in the room, even while it was not painted. But it already had a place in one of the corner cabinets, so I don't have to find room for this. It has room for it. Now, in the long intervening years since I bought this and painted it and put it together and started it and this got it to this point, I have since lost the decals for the gun. But I have emailed Tony at Hunk of Junk. This is the same wonderful organization that I get all of my Lex kits from and Farscape kits from. And he is going to see if he can round me up. He says he did not make this kit anymore. He has sold the patterns to somebody else to make it. But he's going to see if he could dig me up a replacement decal sheet. So that will be very nice. And thank you again, Tony, for going the extra step on that. But that will be the next figure. But Falcon, back to the Falcon. Oh, these are I smudged up the canopy a little bit. I'll wait till tomorrow and then peel those off and see how what my results on that are. Oh, you may want to see back wall of cockpit just with some, doodads painted on there. And I did the same thing inside the gun wells. But we'll pick it up again tomorrow. Good morning, it is Wednesday, and I have dubbed today Wiring Wednesday. We are going to, why am I calling it Wiring Wednesday? Because we are going to wire up the Falcon today. I've got the engine module in place. This morning I bolted down this battery pack, this battery clip. Basically, I've taken the stanchions, or the reinforcement bits of plastic that were right here. There was like a weird box shape underneath this battery pack, and I sat the battery pack on it, and then I packed the underneath of it with the two-part epoxy putty, which is something else you can usually find at your Walmarts or your big box hardware stores. And it sets up really quickly, which is a good thing about it. It works like putty, like an epoxy sculpt, but you can't really tool it like you can epoxy sculpt. So I use it for places where I just need to jam something in there and let it set up real quick, and it needs to fill in a space. Well, that's what I did there. And it also gives a nice weight, because it turns basically into a stone. It gives a nice weight, a nice center of gravity weight to the back of the Falcon there, which is handy. I'm doing all of my wiring work on the top part, oddly enough, and then I will join the bottom to it. I thought of doing everything through the bottom, but that doesn't help me when it comes time to put the cockpit light in. I need to kind of wire all of that into one piece. So I have also taken the time to, I've got one left here. These are the gunwale windows. There you go. Gunwale windows and the cockpit windows. I have not unveiled those yet. This is the piece that doesn't have the glass in it. I did it I tried it out on the other window, and it came out beautifully, and I wasn't going to put that on camera in case it screwed up, but it didn't. I should have more confidence. But that is the one window, and you can see the gunwale in behind there. So what I need to do now is to take the vinyl off of these two bits and see how they turned out. Just as a refresher, this is what the piece looks like with the vinyl down on it. And let's see if I can set this camera up and do some of this unveiling on camera. Okay, let's try it. I think I'm pretty much in the camera. Take a very sharp X-Acto blade, poke it under a corner, lift it off. These are coming off pretty quick. Quite not surprised, because I've done this 100 times, but it's always gratifying to see that the paint stuck exactly where you wanted it to stick and is coming off from where you don't want it to stick. Look at that. Pop, pop, pop. The shame is so much of this is going to be covered by the gun that you're not really going to be able to appreciate too much of it. But there you go. There is let me put something behind it here so you can see. There is a full cleaned out. There you go. Cleaned out window. Very lovely. Ready to pop in place. Now let's do the cockpit module. As soon as I get these stuck on little pieces off of me. Yeah. Okay. First I remove the tape from the inside. This was just to keep it from overspray. Let's see how we've turned out. The stanchions, or the dividers between the windows on the cockpit part, are much thicker, or not thicker, but they're deeper than the windows on the gunwales.
Excuse me, what's the meaning of this?
So far, so good. This one's being a little difficult. It coax it out. There you go. And there you go. One clean glass cockpit. Pop that in place there. And Bob's your uncle. You have a nice... Now we need to do a little bit of blending because the grays aren't quite the same. The plastic, of course, being the base color and this being a painted on color. So we're good. You look at it like that. Just a wee bit of blending makes the medicine go down and we'll be set to go. Put a little light in there to show up. Now that's my next state. My next question is, where does the bulb go? I feel like I want to put it on the floor towards the back and then let it shine up and kind of illuminate the cockpit that way. Okay, we're going to have a slight change in timeline here. It is quite obvious now that, there you go, there's the chair. Quite obvious that the fin figure is not designed to go in the gunner's chair without chopping legs off like I've had to do before with other figures, and I really don't want to do that. And I did a kind of a neat job of painting Finn, so I'm going to put him up in the co-pilot's chair next to Ray, and that's going to push it slightly later into the movie after they have successfully evaded the TIE fighters on the wreckage of the Star Destroyer, but before the ship was taken over by Han and Chewie on their big smuggling ship. So that's the point in the movie this is going to be taking place. It's the takeoff right after that battle. So that means I don't have to put a figure in this gunner's well. I could go ahead and glue that chair in, which I will do now. Just put a little bit of the old 10X in here and slide that chair in, which is also kind of nice because I'm planning on lighting up the chair tunnel. And sorry, that wasn't professional. Lighting up the chair tunnel, and now I won't have a figure in the way of the light passage. So there's the chair in the gun turret, and I can go ahead and put that in place in the lower go ahead and put the lower window in. That's done. I'm not going to glue that in. That pressure fit is enough, plus the other part that gets glued on top of it will be enough to hold it. Now, the tricky thing is I need to make my cut in for the, there you go, that's how it looks like from the outside. I need to make my cut in for the light that's going to go between these two parts, because I believe I said before, when the two halves of the ship are put together, these actually touch each other. So I have to put in a light that is something like that. I need to cut into a channel there and cut out half of it so that the light shines up and down at the same time. Let's do that. Okay, we've hit a wall of my knowledge, which those walls are many, plentiful, and impossible to get over. This works, that works. They both work together. Yes, I'm conjugating the verb to work. When I add the strip for the back engine, it's pulling too much, I guess, pulling too much amps. This is where I don't know about electricity. The voltage should certainly work, but it's pulling too much from the battery. It can't power all three of those. So I am at a loss. The only thing I can think of is to add another, luckily I've got a ton, another battery back here and have a separate battery just for the engines with its own switch. And then I'll have a battery for the gun light and the cockpit, and it'll be on its own switch. So it's 2 switches, 2 batteries to accomplish this fairly simple lighting thing, and it's the only thing I can think to do to make it all work. I'm using 3 different types of LEDs here, and maybe that's the deal. I'm using this little SM LED on magnet wire, and I'm using a regular, I guess that's a 3mm white, and it's got its own resistor, and I've got this strip. But I've seen those strips run like for like days on next to nothing. So I can't figure out why that is drawing so much power. But the only thing left for me to do would be to make another one of these stands, pop another battery in. Luckily there's room for it. And that's the only way I can think around it. Well, it's a simple way around it. Maybe not the smart way around it, but you know, I've never been accused of that. Well, the mailman has just delivered a package for me. I always like to get mail, and I know what this is, and it's going to be continuing the Star Wars themed builds I've been doing lately. Okay, if we stand back far enough, we will see that this is the Revell version of the version of the Star Destroyer. And I've cut the tape off the back of the cover, but I've not, of the lid, but I've not opened it up yet. You can see by all the fine artwork here and the part count in there that this is going to be a fun project for a while. Now, there's all of the bits, and here are the big, oh, that's nice, that's lovely, bits of hull. This is going to be a nice hefty size kit when it is done. Yep. Basically you paint everything white though. It's not a yeah, see there's flat gray, flat white, blah, light gray. Not a lot of fabulous choices in color, but lighting is what this is all about. You light it. I don't know whether I'll light it and hang it, or I'll probably just hang it. Have some sort of onboard lighting in it. That way I can hang it without worrying about running wires to it. But that's going to be happening in the coming weeks. Well, it took some wiring, it took some tinkering, and it took some pushing of things around. But I am finally ready to join the top half and the bottom half together. I tried doing it just with the press fitting, and I was getting that annoying squeak that I was talking about. Every time I put pressure, push down on it, it would give you that plastic squeak. So what I need to do is hit all these contact points with a glue. Now, I would normally use 10X, but 10X goes off very quickly. It dries almost as soon as you put it on there. It's really meant to be one of those things where you hold the 2 pieces together and run a bead of 10X down it and take care of it that way. So I need a slower glue, something that will not dry on the first point before I get to all of the other points. So I'm going to be using the old Plastruck Welding and see if I can get around to the major parts and get them all gooped up before I start putting everything together. Let's see how it goes. Okay, we've got a fully closed up Falcon. When I squeeze on it, I get no squeakage, which is perfect. So that glue's doing its thing. I've got 2 little holes here for switches for the 2 circuits, and I'm going to paint those over white or hull color. Hopefully you'll barely notice them. There is the light that goes in the tunnel and the light that's lighting up the cockpit. We turn the overhead light off. There you go. So you can see the lighting as it's working. There you can see Ray in the pilot seat and Finn in the co-pilot seat. And we turn, of course this will all sit on a stand, but let me turn that off and turn on the engine lights. Trying to do this with one hand is not as easy as you'd think, but there, boom, there's the engine lights. And having them on two separate batteries means they are at full brightness all the time. And if I want to turn one off, I can, and turn the other one on. It's always good to have two circuits, but you don't always need to have two batteries to do that. So, okay, doing this with my, there you go, turning it off from underneath. Good morning, it's Fabulous Thursday, and we are down to almost being done with this Falcon. All we have left to do is to put the tiny, the minuscule, the wee decals on those little guys. Those need to go on said hull, and there are a couple more plating, like this guy that goes up front now that this piece is painted. And I need to decide whether I'm going to glue this piece down or not, or leave it available so that you can open up and gaze in the odd mystery that is the cockpit. There's the cockpit all lidded up. Again, non-Canon lighting. And speaking of cannons, that brings up an interesting topic. These gun turrets. It's a long and well-known mystery that the gun turrets do not fit the ship as stated. They are simply too big to fit in the amount of space, especially the space between them that is shown in the film. The case of the inside sets, the interior sets being larger than the exterior ship. I did notice something interesting. I'm not the first person to point it out. When the ship is flying this way, when it's flying like that, that's about the only way that those guns work in any manner that is healthy for the individuals inside, because one of them is basically on his back. If you're in the top gun, you are lying on your back in the seat, and if you're on the bottom gun, you're basically pushing with your feet to stay into the seat, unless you've got weird little gravity generators or a lot of strapping to keep you in those seats, just based on the orientation of the rest of the ship. And one thing I did notice is that this kit is designed like the A New Hope Falcon, in that the gun, scroll in there, the gun comes down from the ceiling of the gunwale. Basically, that gun would fold out, and the person sitting upright would have the that Y frame. Let me get my little pointing utensil out. This Y frame hangs down from the ceiling, like Luke and Han did in A New Hope. But in Force Awakens, that yoke is on the bottom when Finn is using the gun. I will show you a picture to demonstrate. This is the picture I found yesterday, and I was not the first person to put this together, but I found this picture yesterday when I was getting a photo reference for the gun turret. You'll notice that when Luke is shooting, the gun comes down from the ceiling. That Y yoke. Let me see if I can do this with a pointy device here. This Y yoke is coming down from the top. There's where the Y yoke is, and the gun sits inside of it. So the gun attaches to the rest of the ship up here. Now, when Finn is using the same gun 20 years later, it is coming up from the bottom, and that Y yoke is down here, and the gun is coming up from it. So in the interim, unless there's just something that we don't know, there's an extra swivel in there somewhere where the whole gun swivels upside down. That's a significant gunning difference in 20 years. Maybe that was one of the revisions that Han made to the Falcon after the events of the first 3 movies. But still, an interesting bit of trivia. Okay, I'm calling out as far as the decals goes. There are decals that accentuate, there are decals that show you more detail, and then there are decals that are just tediously small and don't really add anything to what you're doing. And I am beyond the valley of the tedious right now. So that's it for the decals. I put some of the tiny ones on, the more iconic, the more notable ones. Of course, the highway sign above the cockpit window there. But I am not putting all those little tiny hash marks. All of these guys, not the longer ones, but the skinnier one, the shorter ones, yeah, you can forget it. I'm not putting those on. So, what is left to do on this Falcon? I have decided not to glue this in place so that I can pick it off and show people all the wonderful detail that's in there, and it fits nicely by itself with pressure when you are just displaying it. You don't need to glue it in place. There is a nasty light leak behind it, but I'm going to allow that because of the ability to take it on and off is more important than to fix that light leak. All that is left to do, and I have to decide how much of this I really want to do, is to do some of the little tiny grease streaks and runs like that. I am not going to try to airbrush them. That would be folly. But I might go in with the tiny brush and a little bit of the Comart smoke and just make some little trails down here and there. And then chalk the rest up to things that have been cleaned in the 20 years that we haven't seen this ship since the last movie. And that might just bring an end to this Falcon build. And I've spent the last half hour or so playing with these Vallejo stains, weathering effects. And this one is particularly called oil stains, and this one is called Streaking Grime, which I think is a good DJ name. This is my Streaking Grime. Anyway, playing with those on a tiny brush, just going into the panel lines and stuff. They have one benefit over the Comarts is that they are a little bit more pigment heavy, so they stick. They don't all wipe off when you go over it with your Q-tip to wipe it off. If the Comart has a tendency to wipe off almost completely, whereas these weathering effects do stick a little better, a little bit more pigment to them. So I went over the top, and I did some work on the bottom, and it's one of those things that you can make a career out of if you wanted to, as far as putting grime on the Millennium Falcon. It can never get grimy enough, one might imagine. So I'm going to let this sit and then come back to it a little bit later and see if it needs any more or if it indeed is done. And here she is, folks, the finished Falcon. The Falcon be finished. At some point, it just becomes beating a dead horse. And you really could spend a career aging and weathering this beastie to get it to, before you ever want to stop. So I just decided to draw a line in the sand and say, no more. And there's the line in the sand right there. That's what I drew. Anyway, the last thing I did was, let me get this off the base. Hold 1 second. Okay, get it up off the base. Last thing I did was to sand down these switches and paint them so that they disguise a little bit better. Basically, I just took the Dremel and wore them down a little bit more so that they are not as noticeable. They barely stand up. And there you go. Both the switches are on. So, Falcon be finished. Yay. And I find myself at loose ends now because it is mid-Friday afternoon, and I don't really feel like starting anything big. I'm going to put it back on the stand. Starting anything big right now. And I've got a busy weekend because I'm having a a cookout and open house here at the old lab. And hey, if you're in the area, stop by. But I know that by the time I post this, it will already have happened. So there. Well, technically, no. You still would have tonight. This is Friday, by the way, and I'm going to have this open house tomorrow. So I am cleaning and getting ready for that. And I need something that I could knock out and won't take up too much time. And I remembered that I had these. Still in the Falcon frame of mind, I have these. These were a couple of figures that I picked up on the replica prop forum, the old RPF. And I've had them for quite a while. And these are figures to go in the big Falcon that I have in the studio or in the display room. And that luckily, it doesn't have windows in the canopy. It has open, so I can kind of squeeze these down and put them into the seats. And it didn't come with it. It was just went out and checked. Yes, it is the Master Replicas Falcon that these figures need to go into. So I'm going to dash some paint on these and get them ready to go. And it'll be a way to take care of one of those little niggling little projects that needed to be taken care of. Plus, it fills out my Friday afternoon. Okay, these are a little bit large for the 144th Falcon. They look a bit silly, but I think they'll do inside the Master Replica Falcon just wonderfully. So I'm going to go pop them in there. Well, that's not so bad. If you don't look too hard, you won't notice that they don't have any legs below the knee and their hands don't reach the controls, but it is a little bit better than the empty seats, I gotta say. So let me pull back and show the Master Replica Falcon now that I have built the fine mold, or not the fine molds, but the Bandai Falcon. I can see that even on this huge kit, there's a lot of detail that was left off or is inaccurate. So the smaller Bandai does do a better job at capturing some of the detail than even this larger kit does. And that brings us slamming into the end of another week, folks. Playing with the light over here. I'm sorry you can't see that. Spend a lot of it this week getting this little puppy done. And I'll hit the lights on it one more time. Boosh. There's your shot going into the oven. And there is the cabin lights and the gunnery lights. I'll quick turn those off. Spent a lot of time getting this done, only because I got carried away doing the detailing of it. And didn't get much into the figure for this week. But made up for it by doing those two little, the Han and Chewie, to go in the other Falcon, the other big Falcon in the other room. Like I said, a lot of other things, extracurricular things going on this week. Doing a little bit of side work for the Museum of Science Fiction for their annual show. First weekend of September, September 1 through 3. It's called Escape Velocity 2017. It is in Washington, D.C., and I think I might put the link right here so that you can check it out for your own self. But I'm doing some of the I don't want to say point of purchase stuff, but some of the name badges and banners and stuff that are going to be used there. So that took some time. I was exercising the old graphic design muscles that I have not used in a while since I've retired. So that was kind of a fun diversion from all of the model building, all of the strenuous, back-breaking model building. So until next week, when we will, since this is done, we need to pick another ship, and we'll get back on to this. Hold on, let me get him. This wee gentleman that I need to, get started on. So until then, be good to each other, get out and enjoy the sunshine. Try to stay cool if you can, and we'll see you here next week.